All right, welcome everybody to the Big Doug and Carmi Show. George can't make it today, but I assure you I'm fully qualified to take the reins on this thing. Joining us from Detroit, is Craig Hoffman. Craig, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm live at Buffalo Wild Wings. B Mitch is doing his show over there. The guys at WEI, our sister station in Boston, just wrapped up. My guy Danny Parkins is here from Chicago. So the top of the draft is all represented here in Detroit.
Is it me or have you guys, and maybe it's just you differently from other years, it feels like the radio station, you guys have been traveling to the big events more this year. Am I off on that?
No, I mean, some of us have made decisions where we've traveled on our own. This one, though, the fine folks at Odyssey did send me out here, which is amazing. I know that Odyssey is, really ready to step up to some of that with their Odyssey sports coverage. In fact, all the stations just rebranded to specifically that Odyssey sports brand. So I think what you'll see is, like, we have some of the best radio stations in the country. Because B Mitch is at our DC table right now. I'm sitting here at the WFAN table in New York, WEI in Boston, 670 The Score in Chicago. Like, those are some of the best stations in the country, and so getting to pull our resources in more and use our local, all my bosses are so happy right now, but it really is true. Like, the local brands that we have, the footholds we've had that have been built up before many of these stations were owned by the current company, is awesome. So to pull it all together and see stuff like this happen, I think is great. And be remiss to not thank our friends at 97.1 The Ticket, who are hosting here in Detroit, which is also one of the great sports talk radio stations in America.
You're at a Buffalo Wild Wings. What is your go-to wing flavor?
Oh my God, I haven't been to Buffalo Wild Wings in so long. I was a big mango habanero guy back in the day when I frequented B-dubs a lot more often. That was always kind of like if I was feeling spicy, I'd go for it on that one. But I don't know. I'm excited actually to go see what they got. They got like a whole spread for us over there. I smell it, and I'm hungry. Been up since 6 in the morning. I had a small
How
breakfast.
long is the flight?
It was like an hour. It was fine. But I did, luckily I have the Admirals Club situation sorted out. So I had like a little breakfast there at DCA, but it's definitely lunchtime, Doug. So I'm excited to see what flavors they have to offer me today.
No doubt. And listen, as always, I appreciate you doing this and your time now. So it's cool. I get it. New hashtag. Does this excite you at all? New day in Washington.
It makes me so angry, Doug, because now people will find my podcast less easily. That part of the inside baseball behind the scenes of Take Command was like we were thinking about that name, and then they chose that hashtag, and we were like, well, they don't have it it's not like they have it copyrighted. Like, we can use Take Command. And so, selfishly, no, I hate it. No, as a branding exercise, though, RaiseHail is great. I actually think that's a really solid hashtag. It's got like an attitude and an edge. It's the kind of thing that I think fans will actually latch on to. So outside of the selfish reasons that people will be typing Take Command and might accidentally find our podcast less, I do like it.
Daryl Green retirement jersey. I mean, hit hard this morning. Might have got a little water right here watching that original video with all the family coming in. Really cool. It is one of many things to show the fan base that things are really changing, and we've got adults in the room doing the right thing. I can't get over the change in attitude that Dan Quinn's brought. I think people were maybe underestimating him as a football dude that guys really kind of rally around. Have you seen that?
Yeah, no, 100%. I actually did a segment on the radio show about that. Like, I'm trying to think. I think it was free agency when like Wagner signed, and I'm just kind of like, y'all get it now? Like, this is what this dude does. Like, he has an ability to bring people together. And even, honestly, I did like a smaller version of that segment, I think, around the staffing hires, where you see him bring in Anthony Lynn, and that was a big data point, I think. But Cliff, Joe Witt Jr., like, you see all these guys, like, he got everyone he wanted, basically, at coordinator, at position coaches, and you see guys wanting to work here. They then bring their guys with them, the Austin Ecklers of the world coming with an Anthony Lynn, Zach Ertz. I mean, think of Philadelphia Eagles, Zach Ertz signing in Washington because he's like, I want to play for Cliff. And not to mention all the guys that Dan brings personally, and the guys that have experience with he and Joe down in Dallas, so and other places. So I think that the relationships are so huge, and we'll see how they build the actual schemes, and that's pretty freaking important. But in terms of the X's and O's, or the Jimmys and Joes, if you will, like, done an excellent job. And I also think like the clip, I'm sure you saw this, and I'm sure a lot of people watching saw this as well. The clip of Dan talking to his coaching staff in the latest Commanders log, where he talks about you can only coach people to the depth of your relationship with them, is so profound. And like, if you watch that and think, sorry to take a pot shot at Ron here, but like, and think this is Rivera 2.0, like you're just never gonna get it. And not that Ron didn't care about people, but like that is not an approach that he actually took in practice. Maybe he hears that and he's like, oh yes, I believe in that. But it's like, yeah, but you didn't do it. Dan does it, and I think that's going to make a huge difference, especially when we're talking about a young quarterback getting developed in the relationship that hopefully Cliff Kingsbury, obviously develops with presumably Jaden Daniels at this point.
You mentioned Kingsbury. We'll use this as a segue. Have you put your finger together? You mentioned the other offensive guys they brought in coaching-wise with Anthony Lynn. Also, you didn't mention, but they brought in Brian Johnson that worked with Jalen Hurts. Have you started to kind of formulate in your mind what this offense might look like? Cliff has said it won't be air raid. We talked to Chrissy Freud, who is very well versed on the air raid a couple weeks ago, and she said, listen, it's like there are 75% of the plays in the air raid every NFL offense uses. So to say that it's an air raid offense, no, let's talk more about the plays. Anthony, one of the big knocks that I've gotten from talking to people about Kingsbury was he was not good at marrying up his play action, just something he didn't do well. They brought in Anthony Lynn, presumably because he was already good as a running back, knowing this. Then he spent time with Shanahan. You'd assume he's very well versed in this. Have you started picturing what the offense with Kingsbury and that group might look like?
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be air raid elements of it because Cliff Kingsbury is the offensive coordinator. Like at some point, that's just like a fact of the case that is just undeniable, and some of the kind of fundamental principles that Cliff has embarked on or used over the years are going to be a part of this offense. And to me, when I look at Jaden, presuming he's the pick, and how they tailor it to him, the things that marry from Cliff to Jaden are vertical shots down the field, balls going outside the numbers, heavy involvement for the wide receivers. That sounds good to me, considering the roster that they've got here. Can you throw Terry some deep balls down the side? Can you line him or Jahan up in the slot and throw that box fade that Jaden throws beautifully? Can you leverage the speed of those two guys and some of the other guys that they have in deep comebacks and like let Jaden throw with anticipation and dart a guy on a back shoulder, 20 yards down the field when all of a sudden the route just breaks off and stops? Like those are the things that I think from Cliff that you're going to get, that he did a lot of 3x1s and like, hey, if you like the one side, go get it, and we're going to give you some answers if that matchup isn't great or they've got safety help, and so you're going to have advantageous numbers on the 3 side, and we're going to cut the field in half in a way that is helps you instead of hurts you. So I think those are the things that are going to ultimately be taken from Cliff's offenses in the past. But even some of that stuff, like his last year in Arizona, when Logan went back and watched it, he's like, I see a lot of the stuff that we ran in San Francisco. Like
a lot of 12 personnel run heavy, right?
They use a lot of the stuff that Kyle has used, and Sean and Kevin and all those dudes have used over the years. And like Cliff, who knows those guys, like Cliff and Sean are super tight, like used it to create an NFL style offense that had some air raid stuff in it, but was certainly West Coasty in certain ways, and took some of the things that they like from that offense. And so then you add in, Anthony Lynn, and I'm glad you mentioned Brian Johnson too, who's got a ton of experience with the quarterback run game in Philadelphia. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the other piece of this is obviously there's going to be a traditional running game that Anthony Lynn brings and hopefully marries to this offense, both in personnel, formation, etc. And then Brian Johnson and Bobby Johnson, by the way, the O-line coach, who's got experience with this in Buffalo and New York under Dable with Josh Allen and Daniel Jones, to have some kind of quarterback run element when you have a guy who's as good of a runner as Jaden Daniels is.
You keep talking about nothing but Jaden. I'm assuming you think that's the pick at number 2. It has been refreshingly quiet out of Ashburn when you hear guys like Daniel Jeremiah say, Drake May feels like an Adam Peters guy who I've known forever, and yet mocks Jaden Daniels to the Commanders at 2. How do you think we got to the point where it feels unanimous that Jaden Daniels is at 2?
I don't know, Doug, and it kind of bothers me because
Right.
I just full transparency with you is the same full transparency I've given on every platform I have. I'm not in the information game anymore. Occasionally I talk to people and like get some intel and stuff like that, but like I don't major in that anymore, and I have not talked to anybody particularly like in the league about this. So this is me watching the same as you and everybody else, kind of with an understanding of how these things happen, because I have been a reporter and like have dealt in that stuff in the past, but largely going like, I don't see how the dots necessarily connect on this one. My guess is like there's been conversations between like Peters in the front office and you know, other people in the building, maybe even, and you know, Jaden's agents, and then the agents wind up talking to the media, or maybe some other scouts do. But like I heard this story the other day about when Peters was in San Francisco and a reporter was covering the Niners and like had someone pretty high up, like not at Peters' level as the AGM, but like whatever the tier below that is, tell him like the night before the draft, we're not taking Trey Lance. And then all of a sudden the reporter the next day is like, dude, what the hell? Like, don't do that to me. Just like, don't tell me anything. He's like, I didn't think we were taking Trey Lance. I didn't lie to you. I didn't know. And so there is still that chance that they go, whether it's May or McCarthy and not Daniels, because people who are speaking don't know what Adam Peters wants to do. It would not surprise me if the people on planet Earth who know what the pick is numbered at 4. Those 4 would be Dan Quinn, Lance Newmark, the assistant GM, Adam Peters, and Josh Harris. Like, if Mark Ein and Mitch Rales don't know, that would not surprise me, because that's how tight Peters keeps things. So ultimately, people, like, the fact that Schrager is like, you can put my name on it, Daniels is going it too, that says a lot to me. Like, someone saying something somewhere. But, like, if they pull a fast one tonight, I would not be surprised at all.
If they pull a fastball and say take Drake May, would they then have been? Is it wrong to not listen to offers for 2 if you think you can get Drake May, pick where 2 later? Say the Raiders want to get up for Daniels, would you make, like, is Daniels good enough to you that you're just not listening to any of these things? Because this notion that they won't listen sounds weird.
So I was the one who tweeted about that the other day, of like, if you got your guy, don't listen. And the reason basically is if you really believe he's that dude, and let's say it's Drake, let's say it's JJ, let's say it's Jaden, whoever your guy is, whoever the guy that Peters locked in on it to, is your guy. In the way that like the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes was their guy. They were going to go up and get him. Or Josh Allen and the Bills, they went up and got him. If you have that level of belief, there is no trade in the world that is worth a quarterback like that. And at that point, why get distracted? Why get tempted? Like, if you are happily married, if you will, why are you like, well, yeah, I mean, I could go have lunch with her. Like, no, you don't. Don't do that. Fellas, ladies, don't do that. Just be happy with where you are. And like, where my this is why it's hard, I think, for all of us that do this, is where my quarterback evaluation is, I would 1,000% be listening, and I would 98% be making a trade. If I feel like, especially if I can get any of those top 3 guys, I'm happy. They're all different, but I have them ranked tiered, like in the same tier. Caleb's in tier 1. There's 3 guys in tier 2. In which case, I don't have, like, none of them is better on their own than one of the other ones, plus multiple first-round picks. And so if that's the case, I would trade back. But I'm not Adam Peters. He's got more information. He's clearly, or not, I shouldn't say clearly, because we just established that nobody actually knows anything, or knows as much as they maybe do in the past or with other franchises that are leakier. But if he's locked in on a guy, then they should just stay there and pick that guy, and don't get distracted by, you know, Tom Telesco, hey, Antonio Pierce looks like he's about to tackle me. You can have my next 4 drafts because he really wants to reunite with Jaden Daniels.
I get to thinking, how pumped must Adam Peters be for tonight? You know what I mean? Like, you spent your whole life for this right here, grinding in obscurity, as the scouts do, and here he is living the dream. Gotta be pumped.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of excitement for tonight, but like, in some ways tonight is like, you know when a champion repeats and they talk about, oh, we were relieved more than we were joyous?
Yes.
Like, I almost wonder if the number 2 pick, because of the need at quarterback, the franchise it's for, like the pressure that is around this. And I do think Peters and Harris specifically are very well suited to deal with that pressure. They are not going to care about what the outside thinks, and that is a great characteristic for both of them to have at those two spots. With that said, like they're still humans. And so they probably feel that, and I would assume that they have known for at least a couple days, if not a couple weeks, which direction they were leaning / going, and they will be relieved to make that pick. And then the real fun starts, because that's where Peters has been so great in the past is, okay, let's look at these tackles at the end of round one. Does one fall? Do we want to get back in? Do we call Cincinnati about Trey Hendrickson? Do we, and then tomorrow they've got 5 more picks. Like, let's party. Like, that's, to me, if I'm a scout, like that's where the fun is, right?
Well, that's interesting. Let's talk about it. I brought this up several times recently, this notion that if Fashanu or one of these top tackles dips down to that 13 to 17 range, are you, Craig Hoffman, the GM, more likely to trade both second-round picks to, say, get up to 13 for Fashanu, or are you more like, I'll trade 40, one of the third's future pick to get into the mid-20s if a Mims is there or a Guyton is there?
I'm more likely to do the latter, or even to say, like, let's just wait it out. Like, let's go.
Because the GM loves picks to play with, right? That's part of the whole deal.
Well, it's that, and like just all of the data suggests that's the better move. Like, there's just mounds and mounds of evidence that taking 2 swings is better than 1. Because if you hit at 50%, great. You've got one good player. You have to hit the one good player if you take 1 swing. And so, obviously the long, like, convoluted answer that everybody knows at this point, or at least I hope they do, is like, it depends on what you think of the player. If you think Fashanu could be the best tackle in this draft, you absolutely should trade 2 second-round picks for him and go lock him down and be okay with that and say, hey, we could have come away with this draft with 1 first-round pick and 2 seconds. Instead, we did 2 first-round picks. Like, that is a fine trade if you think that dude is legitimately first-round grade, top-tier tackle in this draft. But I would probably just try to stay put and maybe, like, the thing is, like, obviously the later it goes, the less you have to give up. If I can still come out of this keeping 36 and having a chance to take an edge or whatever, I think that is that's probably the direction I would lean.
More likely that they trade up into the first round for a tackle, or get excited if a guy like Chop Robinson is still there at 20?
I would say tackle. Tackle's a much heavier need because they didn't address it in the way. Like, they need a stud edge player for their long-term plans, but they don't need one right now in the way they need a left tackle right now. Like, Corn Lucas can buy you a couple of weeks. Corn's performed really well, but as Keim is fond of saying, he has hit free agency multiple times and no one has signed him, which tells you something about his capacity to play 17 games. And so with that, I think left tackle trading up. I mean, it's also going to depend, again, like, I hate to keep saying it, but on the evaluation, because, like, Logan thinks Mims could wind up being the best left tackle in this draft. And so if Mims is that dude and he falls to 25, or I guess, 23 is kind of the magic spot, you get ahead of Dallas, then sick. Like, if you think he's the best tackle in the draft, go get him. I would be concerned that he's only going to play 10 games a year based off his injury history, and, like, that's one of the downsides. Even, honestly, that's a bigger downside than the lack of tape, because every snap he puts on tape is freaking great.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the calculation you're making. But a tackle feels like the right one.
He should have never run that 40. He ran the 40, messed his hamstring up. I don't think he was injury prone before that. He had the tightrope surgery on the ankle and then rushed it back. Bowers did the same thing, so they get in the SEC championship game. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is,
I'm
like,
a Georgia house.
Yeah, when you only play 7-8 games, like, there's got to be a reason why, and I think that's part of what teams are trying to figure out is, like, does this dude just stay hurt? Because he got hurt. He got hurt, unhurt, and then hurt again at the combine. That's not a great. It's not a great recent history.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. Running the combine to prove that you can get under 5 flat and as a 300-pounder isn't nearly as valuable as not busting your hammy.
Yeah, he should have just run the 10-yard split, like, busted out of his stance, split like a 1-7, whatever he did, 1-8, like, and then just be given a thumbs up and walked off and been like, you guys got the data that you needed. I'm not running a full 40 yards. I'm
He's
never
a
running
freak,
40
though.
yards in a game. Can I
They
get
should-
off the ground? Yes.
They should
There's
never
your
do
answer.
that. Yes. Yeah, you're right. The explosion metrics. A lot of people are nervous about the cornerback situation. Are you? How much of a bump does Witt and Dan Quinn give to the corners that a lot of people were high on but haven't done much?
I did not think it was possible to have less of a clue on something than the quarterback situation between the three guys in this draft. And then you just asked me about cornerback, and I'm reminded that this is the answer to that question. I have no idea what to make of Benjamin St. Juste and really Emmanuel Forbes. But like, you put them together and they're the greatest Dan Quinn football player that's ever walked on the face of the planet. You have a long, rangy corner with ball skills. The problem is you take all of the ball skills away and you give them to Emmanuel Forbes, and you take all of the size and you put that in Benjamin St. Juste, and now you have two players that I have no idea what to do with. And so it really does depend on what they want. And I think the other interesting factor here, to kind of answer your question more directly in terms of the draft and the corner situation, is what do they think of Quinn? They clearly like him. But they like him as a safety, they like him as a nickel, they like him as a Buffalo nickel, as a hybrid. So are you looking for outside corner at 36 or 40 potentially, or are you looking for nickel corner? Because if you're looking at nickel corner, I love the options that are probably going to be there. You tell me you can go get Mike Sanders still, the best nickel in this draft, and like sick, sign me up. You tell me I got to get one of these outside guys, and you wind up with kind of some flawed guys that you're wondering, like, okay, does TJ Tampa have the ball skills? Does some of the other guys have the size? And I think we will learn a lot more about what they think of Quinn and what they think of these guys based off if they go with one of those 2 second-round picks at corner and what kind of corner that they take.
Curl's gone. I'm assuming that, you mentioned Quinn. It feels like the last group drafted him as an eventual replacement if they didn't get something done with Cam. Do you like him there? Forrest will come back. If Quinn and Forrest are the two safeties, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I am. Obviously Butler hanging around in the background too, yes. Jeremy Chin, and like that's the big one.
I keep forgetting about Chin. They have them listed as a linebacker, right?
Right. So, but like, does he wind up taking over that kind of hybrid linebackery role, and that bumps Quinn into being a full-time safety, of which he's, I think, capable. So if that's the case, then like, yeah, I'm all right with that. Forrest is always, at this point, he's 2-3 years into his career, which means he's a year or two away from getting paid. And no, I'd say getting paid, like not breaking the bank, but like a veteran contract. So you can always plan ahead. I think there's some guys later in this draft that are interesting. We did a big, kind of defensive preview with Charles Davis a couple weeks ago on Take Command, or last week. I don't know. Time is a flat circle. But it's definitely worth, if folks want more info on the safety class, of going and listening to, because there are some guys that are interesting, kind of third round, fourth round, that could be very helpful on special teams to start and could develop into starting caliber safeties moving forward. So the way that this class falls, there's not like stud safeties early, but there's some nice variety third, fourth, fifth round. And so if there's a guy that they like, this is where you're so happy that you have Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. and the guys they brought in on that defensive staff to develop these guys, where you feel pretty comfortable about no matter who they pick, like they'll make themselves right because they're good at this.
I liked Jordan Hicks from Washington State as one of those safeties.
That was the name I was trying to think of. Like Charles, Logan, they both love that dude because he is a hitter. Like I remember Logan the first time we talked about safety being like, if you watch that guy versus UW, like he's a first round pick. Like this is one of the greatest safety games he's ever seen in college football. And I think it was like Oregon or one of the other games. He's like, that dude's undraftable. Like it's awful. So like that's why he's a mid round pick, right? Is like some of the high stuff is really high. And it's a big swing potentially, because if you're Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr., you're like, we have a great history of developing defensive backs, and if we can get consistency out of this guy, like that is a steal. If some of the issues that other teams were able to exploit pop up, like he's a special teams player, and that's why it might be a little rich to spend 67 or whatever it is on him.
They've got it's not a great year to need a running back. Fortunately for Commanders, they don't technically need a running back. The room's fine to me with Brian Robinson, Eckler, and Rodriguez. They drafted a couple of years ago. But, Eckler's not getting used, and he's only on a one-year deal. Would you be looking at running backs in the fourth or fifth round this year? Is running back something you draft every year, no matter what?
Yeah, I kind of think that's the play, right? Is like every single year. And then I also think the one thing that Charles pointed out that was really smart is some of the like the Antonio Gibson, ironically, body types, the Cordero Patterson body types went up in value the second the owners changed the rules and brought kickoff returns back into the game.
Right.
So who's your guy back there? Who's the guy that's like the bigger body type that is kind of like the kickoffs in the XFL, which is the rule is obviously modeled after. Like they were kind of, or like the schematics of kickoff return wound up being like kind of this power gap scheme running game looking thing. And so who's the big power back that can one cut, get downhill and go and run people over and run through arm tackles and survive some hand-to-hand combat? Like, who's that guy? I don't know this running back class well enough. It's not fresh enough in my mind. I'll refresh before the end of the weekend, and people ask me about this stuff in days 2 and 3. But like, there are some guys on.
Yes, it's the Bucky Irvin
class.
from Oregon,
Yeah.
it's the kid from USC. Like those guys
Yeah,
are probably
no, Bullock's the safety from USC, but like, yeah,
Marshawn Lynch, maybe.
I don't think Beast Mode's in this draft. That could be fun though.
Marshawn Lloyd.
There you go. So like there are options available. That is one of them. I would not prioritize it, but it does make a guy kind of, here's your sidebar to this, like Malachi Corley, the wide receiver out of Western Kentucky. Western Michigan. I always get him and England confused in which Western school they went to. I think Corley's out of Western Kentucky.
Western Kentucky, yeah.
Yeah. Like he's kind of the Curtis Samuel, Debo Samuel body type. Yeah. Like you get him in the third round somehow, and he's your kick returner and wide receiver, 3/4, however you want to look at it, with Zacchaeus coming in. That to me is like that's a better pick. I'd rather have a hybrid kind of guy who I can use as a kick returner than I would a traditional downhill running back when I have Chris Rodriguez already.
Yes, you mentioned receiver. It's not a great room. I mean, it's heavy at the top, I suppose. If you're still in on Dotson, they've got to do something receiver fairly early, I think, unless this new group is really sold that they can get something out of Diami Brown, because they haven't gotten anything out of him yet.
Man, I'm certainly not getting. I'm very happy to have Diami Brown be one of my lead special teams guys, and I do think it's like we're pointing out.
Wide receiver.
Diami is a very good special teams player who blocks his ass off, and like that is a valuable guy on a football team. It is not someone you want in your top 3 receivers. Elimide Zacchaeus is a legitimate NFL wide receiver. I would rather have him be my wide receiver 4 than my wide receiver 3, and that gets into like kind of the inverse of the corner question, Doug, which is, what kind of receiver do you want? And I do think that the guys currently in DC at the top of that room give you some flexibility here. If you want to make Jahan a slot, I don't necessarily know that that's going to be the greatest idea, but he certainly does have a skill set that suggests with some good coaching he could get there. So if you want to go take a big X receiver, you want to take a Keon Coleman, then go do it. Slide Terry to the Z. Let Terry run around all over the place. Let Jahan play in the slot, and let's see what Cliff can do. And some of those guys have positional versatility to go inside, outside, etc. You could also use some of these guys as like power slots, some of the bigger body types, and maybe develop them long term into an outside X receiver. By the same token, if you tell me Lad McConkey falls to 36, I am running.
Don't tease me, Craig.
Podium. I know. As soon as I said, I was like, oh, that's an excited Georgia Bulldog over there on the other side of the screen. Like that dude's just gonna, like, him in a Cliff offense. Hey, go get open. Okay, cool, done. Like, what better? I know he's smaller, obviously, but like outside of a tight end who has the same exact skill set, what better quarterback-friendly weapon could you go get than a Lad McConkey? And so he's a dude who could have 100 catches as a rookie in a Cliff Kingsbury offense. And so I know that sounds crazy, but like if he's as good as I think he is as a route runner, and some of the people that I know around the league think he is as a route runner, like that is on the table. And so that kind of body type and just keeping Jahan outside, I think, is also which is great because this is a super deep receiver class. And I think the one pitfall you could fall into as a general manager is just convincing yourself every time you have a choice between your receiver and another position in this draft that there's another good receiver waiting for you in the next round. And then all of a sudden you get into the 6th and you're like, oh, these guys definitely aren't as good as the guys we could have taken 3 rounds ago. Not that there aren't going to be guys there, but don't wait too long just because there is a guy later.
With 7-on-7 becoming so prevalent, it feels like this is why we see more receivers every year being ready to step in and go right away. It's the reason, Craig, why I'm not in favor of trading for an Ayuk or a T.
Correct.
Higgins and then paying them an absorbent amount of money. The fan base just assumes that because will be drafting Jaden Daniels, that they should go and send out a first or second round pick for Ayuk and then pay him a lot of money. I don't get why you would ever do that.
No, I mean, the whole reason that T. Higgins is available is because the Bengals decided that they don't want to spend that much money at receiver. You've already paid Terry McLaurin. Hopefully, Jahan Dotson gets back on the track that we thought he was on, and you need to pay him in a couple of years. Why would you go get another guy to pay right now? Like that is literally like, hey, you have a problem? Can I take that off your hands to create the same problem for myself? No,
Yeah,
don't
that
do that.
problem.
That's very stupid. And especially in a draft class that is this loaded at receiver, that's not to say you can't add a receiver. It's just resource management. Add a cheap receiver. Now, if you want to take that same approach to Trey Hendrickson and give Cincinnati a call about an edge player who had, 17 and a half sacks last year or something ridiculous like that, they've got the cap space. That's fine with me. He doesn't necessarily fit their timeline as a 29-year-old, so like I'm not saying if they don't do it, it's some huge mistake. But like that makes way more sense to me as you decided not to pay Sweat or Young than it does with the resource management when we're talking about receiver. Like that's insane.
It sounds crazy. I hate to even do this, but I'll do it anyway. If they hit on quarterback and tackle this year, and at least those positions you feel like, all right, this is good. How close, how good can they be next year? Because it sounds stupid to say they want to win. Of course they want to win, but
Right.
sometimes you know where you're at. If they get competent quarterback and tackle play, how competitive can they be next year?
I think they can be a 500-ish, maybe a little bit better team. So at the end we did like a final thoughts take command pod, and I ran this by Logan. I'm curious what you think of this. To me, like the floor for Jaden, assuming again that he's the pick, is like Tyrod. And so when I say the floor is
Which
Tyrod,
I like
I'm
that
saying,
comp. He's a better Tyrod, and I like Tyrod.
Right, like imagine if he's Tyrod now and gets better, like that's amazing. And you look at Tyrod's career, and like he's got a couple 20 touchdown, like 6 pick seasons. One of the things that like Tyrod is great in part because he'll tuck it and run. He's dangerous, but and by the way, Jaden's better at running than Tyrod is, and Tyrod's a pretty freaking good runner. But Tyrod doesn't turn the football over. It's part of the reason that like the Giants won a couple games is because like Tyrod takes care of the football, and maybe he takes a few more sacks and whatever that you like, and there's throws away occasionally when you're like, dude, can you go make a play for us? Like you're so athletic, figure it out. But at the end of the day, he doesn't throw picks very often. And Jaden obviously went 40-4 last year. So if you get like solid quarterback production, limit turnovers, which definitely is in Jaden's bag, tackle play O-line play winds up being good enough. Terry's going to make some plays for you. Jahan's going to make some plays for you. This defense has a chance to be like very solid. And if one of these edge guys like has a year, then it could be really good. Obviously, we'll see on the turnover production. Like that's the other thing. Like don't turn it over offensively, create turnovers defensively. Great analysis, Craig. But like really, that is the formula. Like you can be an 8-9, maybe even 10 if some injury luck goes bad for some other teams in your division, win football team. And then the question is like, what do you do with that information? Because it seems like making the playoffs in your first year as a regime has turned out terrible. But they did so much good work. They did so much good work in this offseason. And that like is kind of a weird thing though, now that I kind of flush this thought out even more. Sorry to get a little rambly here, but like part of the reason they have a chance to do that is all these one-year guys. So then what do you do next year? And I think that is like a pretty existential question, but that's one we can deal with all next offseason. Problem I would love to have.
Yeah, yes. And of course, this roster isn't set because we know there'll be cuts at camp and people will move on, and this roster may still look oddly different than it does now. Craig, what is the plan for the rest of the day for you there in Detroit?
Gonna go see what wing sauces they have here at the B-Dubs. We're gonna go be able to answer your question of what wing sauce I want today, and then I might go walk around. Like we're right around the corner from like kind of the main draft site, so I think I'm gonna go scope out kind of what's going on around here. And then 4:00 we're on until 7. I'll probably tape something with Brian B. Mitch is over there wrapping up his show over the next hour 20 and change. Danny Parkins from 670 Score is gonna pop on as well. So got a fun show planned. We're gonna take a ton of calls. talk to Commanders fans live on the Team 980, and then tonight is when it gets real fun. Obviously, being here, the team has been nice enough to say, like, we'll get you an interview with the pick so long as it's here. So as long as it's Drake or Jaden, I'll be talking to the draft pick at some point tonight for about 5 minutes. That'll be heard on our coverage. Every pick of the draft is on the Team 980, and my interview will be there as well as on my YouTube page and Team 980's YouTube page and the fans' YouTube page. We'll put that one everywhere. And then probably hop on with Grant Danny during that coverage. Logan and I are planning on doing a live stream later tonight as well. So big hefty day of a lot of talking.
Good thing you won't be busy today.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna pass out, and then I'm gonna get up tomorrow morning, and I'm gonna go right back to the airport. I did make it out of the airport before checking in for my return flight, but not by much.
Do you think you'll be interviewing 2 people?
No, but that is because none of the tackles are here. That isn't they won't be trading back in. I do think there's a great chance of 2 picks being made tonight, but Mims and Guyton and like the only tackle that's here is J.C. Latham, and I don't think he A, fits what they want, or B, is going to be the guy that they would trade back up for.
I agree, and Latham's weight scares me anyway. Craig, you're the best, buddy, man. Have a great time today. Should be a ton of fun. They literally are restarting the franchise today with pick number 2. It's exciting. Have a safe flight home.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure to be on with you. Happy to do it any time, and congrats. I can't wait to come back on with Carmi here. I mean, I love coming on with you, but now congrats on kind of the next iteration of the show, man. It's really cool to see you guys continue to have great success.
I appreciate you, brother. We'll talk to you soon.